Welcome back for what I hope you're finding is an enormously impactful conversation with Sam Sorbo about the kind of moment we find ourselves in. I think we're all aware of a lot of things that aren't right in our country at the moment, a lot of things that are evidence of radical left agendas being promulgated and imposed upon us. But it's not altogether clear how we got to this point, and what we've just been doing, I think, is breaking the code. It's no small measure what we've done or allowed to be done to our kids over the years. And to equip us to push back, Sam Sorbo has just published a terrific book. She calls it Words for Warriors. And Sam, tell us a little bit about how you came to realize that a lexicography lesson was in order, and what you've tried to do with this book for this particular moment and this particular cause.
Well, I don't know that I would call it that, but it started with the word fascism, and I was hearing that being bandied about. Antifa is supposedly anti-fascist, and then you had the right-wing fascists, and I went, wait a minute, there's no such thing as a right-wing fascist.
Right.
And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how many words the left has literally hijacked, changed their meanings, down to the word man and woman. And that's dangerous, because once we lose our ability to communicate, well, let me put it this way. When a child is about to hit another child, they're so frustrated, they're just going to lash out and hit the other child. What do? We say, use your words, honey. Use your words. And what do we try right before we go, typically, right before we go and bomb, say, Syria? We try diplomacy, which is what? Words, conversation, argumentation. We try to come to agreements with our words in order to avoid violence. But the left loves violence. That's why they love the riots over the summer. They only dislike certain kinds of violence when they can pin it on the wrong parties, and then they can shame them. And so I just started, collecting a number of those words. And then as I wrote the book, because it wasn't supposed to be it was sort of an exercise for me at first, and then it turned into a book, and I decided to put in some fun words. So we've got COVIDiots in there. That's a Chris Plant invention.
Yes.
People who get crazy over COVID, and feargasm. Ted Nugent gave me that one. And it comes right after fascist in the book, actually. So
Yes.
The idea is to pull these words apart, tell people what they really mean and how they're being used in the culture, and how we can work to take them back. One of the words in there is gaslighting. I hope everybody by this point knows what gaslighting is and can recognize it when they see it.
Yeah, describe how you would define it.
Well, gaslighting is sort of the salami tactic, but on steroids in a sense. The idea is to make you think that you're the crazy one. So, you don't like wearing a mask and you don't believe in it? You're crazy. You're just, and it's
and that
pervasive
business about
now.
Shaming too.
You don't believe a man can be a woman? You're crazy. That's crazy. Of course a man can be a woman.
Right, just as long as they identify as such. Talk a little bit about one of the characters that you've identified. And again, I don't think we can study both his teachings, his education, if you will, his community organizing, and its impact too comprehensively. And that is Saul Alinsky. Rules for Radical, I think, is his masterwork. But talk a little bit about his impact in this time.
Rules for Radical, the book that was dedicated to the devil, the book that I believe Hillary Clinton did her dissertation on. And in fact, Words for Warriors is in the title reflective of Rules for Radicals, because I think the right needs a little bit of a guidebook, if you will.
Yes.
Rules for Radicals delineates rules that he prescribes that people follow in order to subvert and destroy the American culture. And this is a culture war that we're in. It's a spiritual battle as well as a physical battle. It will become physical if we lose our words. But one of the things that one of the tactics that he advocates is that you isolate an opponent, you ridicule the opponent, and then you destroy them. Now, President Trump did an amazing thing because he took a few pages from Saul Alinsky's book. He identified the opponent was CNN. He marginalized them. He isolated them. He talked about fake news, but then he blamed CNN for fake news, and he virtually destroyed them with that. And we ought to learn from those tactics. And the reason that we ought to learn from those tactics is because, one, they're effective, and two, we have the truth. And so as long as we still have breath and words that mean something, we ought to be using them to fight against this insidious ideology.
Which brings me to the last topic, Sam Sorbo. Your husband, Kevin, is a prominent figure, is a Renaissance man, perfect compliment to you. He has been deplatformed, as I understand it, by Facebook. As an example, I think, of Alinskyite rules for radicals being applied to suppress him, to suppress his freedom of speech. He's not the only one by any means. It's happening to lots of people these days. But talk a little bit about the application of this Alinskyite business of not just freezing and polarizing the adversary, but cutting them off from, sympathetic supporters as well. And the importance in our time, for all these reasons that you've been discussing, of our freedom of speech.
Well, first of all, I'm gonna say he wasn't deplatformed. He was digitally assassinated. I can use words just like they can. And the liberal fascists is what they are. Political correctness is simply fascism of speech. Yes. And so, yes, they digitally assassinated him. Then they disposed of the body because they didn't tell anybody that they had offed him. They simply took his page down. They didn't even tell him. And then we just got an email like 2 days ago saying, you are going to be deplatformed at the end of March. Well, it's too little too late. Yeah. I believe that they sent that in order to be able to say, no, we did warn him. And now I'm sure they're going to come out and say, oh, the warning didn't go out in time. I don't know how that happened. Well, nothing we can do about it now.
Shucks.
They are on the attack. Now, let me just point out, this is something that I just heard and I want to share with you. The second crime scene is always worse than the first. So this is fair warning to you folks out there. Let me explain. When a child is abducted, the first crime scene is the abduction. And so the parent says to the child, listen, if anybody ever tries to get you in their van, you scream bloody murder, you make a big scene, because the second crime scene is always worse than the first. You do not want to get in that van. Folks, they are trying to get you in the van. And the second crime scene is going to be much worse than the first. So if you think deplatforming, digital assassination is any big deal, you got a bigger thing coming. I assure you. The left loves violence. They love it. They love death. Look what their party stands for. Look what their party, like, they have no problem with killing a child once it is born. I mean, these people are demonic. And we ought to recognize that. Now, I don't group everybody in that basket, so to speak. But listen, if you haven't woken up yet, I've got no use for you. So wake up, understand what your party represents. One of the first things that Biden did when he took office was the Mexico treaty. And that's funding abortions abroad. So your tax dollars go to fund killing babies abroad.
Right.
That wasn't on his platform. It wasn't in any of his, no advertising there. He just went and did it.
Yeah.
These people have an agenda. It is anti-American. It is anti-human. And we need to wake up.
And what we're witnessing, Sam, is the complicity of corporations, notably the big tech giants,
sadly, being
in cahoots with the Democratic Party radicals in Congress, elective office, and administration, and otherwise. And this is what makes, I think, your work, and Kevin's for that matter, so vital. You are raising the alarm about what is happening, but also explaining how it has come to pass and offering some specific constructive steps as to what we can do to correct it. In the free speech space particularly, aside from obviously internalizing your words for warriors. What would you recommend we be doing as individuals, or better yet, as a community of people, to push back in defense of our First Amendment rights?
Well, first of all, we need to organize. They are very organized and we are not. And so the first thing I would say is reach out to your neighbors and find out who among them are like you so that you have friends in the battle, because we need to be organized. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, hey, I want to get your book, but I don't want to buy it on Amazon. Good for you. Go to samsorbo.com. Look for alternate ways of making your purchases so that you're not supporting the tech companies that are out to destroy your values and your principles.
Right.
And we just need to do more along those lines. When you find information, share it with people, and don't be that afraid to go out into the public space to get the job done, because we need to know that there are other people out there.
Amen.
If you go to church, make sure that your pastor understands where you stand and make sure that he is standing. We need pastors to step up in the United States because we are a Judeo-Christian nation.
Sam,
and if we lose that, the battle's lost.
Amen. We are out of time. Among those that you need to be talking to about all of this, of course, as well, are your kids. Try to make sure that they're being properly educated, and do your part to help that come about. Sam Sorbo, thank you for this great insight into so many of the challenges that we're facing and the difficulties that we can overcome, especially if we work together to do so. Follow Sam at the Sam Sorbo, and we'll be coming right back with more with Jeff Nyquist after this.